Rio de Janeiro might be one of the most visually stunning cities in the world. The beaches are iconic, the mountains drop straight into the sea, the energy is high, and the lifestyle seems effortless. And for a few days, it feels like someplace you could stay forever. But here's the real question. Could Rio de Janeiro become part of our long-term rotating home bases strategy? Not as a vacation, but as part of a retirement plan. Because beautiful isn't enough. If we're going to build a retirement that works for us, we need to find a way to evaluate places beyond just how they make us feel. So today, I want to use Rio as a real-world example of the framework we're creating to help us scout locations for our future. And if you're considering retirement abroad, the framework we're working on here could help you avoid an expensive mistake down the road. My name is Rick, and this is Finding My Retirement. In our first video, I mentioned something I'm calling a rotating home bases lifestyle. Instead of what people commonly call fast travel or slow travel, and instead of picking one permanent location as an expat, we're looking at developing a system where we have 3 locations around the world where we spend 3 months each year. Long enough to feel settled, but short enough to avoid getting bored. And geographically diverse, so we'd have 3 jumping off points to explore 3 different parts of the world. The goal isn't constant movement, it's structured flexibility. But that only works if the locations we choose can hold up, legally, logistically, financially, and emotionally, year after year. So in this video, we start to ask the question of how Rio holds up to our system. Rio is easy to fall in love with. The scenery is dramatic, the energy is contagious, and the weather, most of the year, is fantastic, especially if you're one of the many people who likes to chase the sun. And if we were choosing a place based solely on how it feels, Rio might be a top contender. But that's the trap. A week somewhere is not real life. Even a month can be deceptive. When you're on vacation, or even in extended stay mode, you're not testing the things that actually determine whether a place works long term. You're not dealing with long-term housing logistics, healthcare systems, day-to-day living, not as a tourist, but as a resident. Residency rules and bureaucracy. You're consuming the highlight reel, and it's fun. I know I've done that for decades on vacation, but it's not the same thing as building a life. If we're serious about building a rotating home bases lifestyle, we need something more than impressions. We need a framework. We need a repeatable way to evaluate locations, so that Rio is judged by the same criteria as Buenos Aires, or Porto, or wherever we go next. As we've thought about an evaluation structure that makes sense for us, we've realized it really comes down to 2 different layers of assessment. The first is the foundational layer, kind of a pass-fail section, where if a city fails that test, it's a non-starter for us, no matter how beautiful it is. For us, the foundational questions are 1, is it financially feasible? 2, is it reasonably safe? 3, is there reliable access to healthcare? And 4, is the climate one that we could deal with long term? If a place passes those initial tests, then we move to the second layer, how it feels to actually live there. This includes things like walkability and public transportation, food culture, housing stability, visa requirements, and the harder to define question of emotional fit. Not just did we enjoy it, but could this location be one of our 3 long-term rotating home bases? So in this video, we're going to do 2 things. First, I'll share our honest impressions about Rio, because those matter. But second, we'll put Rio to the test using our developing evaluation framework and see how Rio holds up, because loving a place and living in a place are not the same thing. Before we jump into the more analytical tests, let's take a quick look at how Rio feels to us. Not the postcard version, but the day-to-day life version. Lifestyle and emotional fit are extremely subjective. What works for one person might be a complete disaster for someone else. But in an effort to wrap our arms around what is such an inherently subjective category, we're going to look at things like the rhythm of the city, its energy level. Is it loud and chaotic, or calm and peaceful? Are the people warm and friendly, and do we think we could fit in? How comfortable do we feel with the overall vibe? The other thing that makes this category particularly challenging is that we have 2 people evaluating everything, and we don't necessarily agree on what makes a city have a good feel. It's pretty easy for 2 people to agree on whether a city is too expensive or whether it has good health care. but they might disagree strongly upon the overall feel of a city and whether it provides a good lifestyle. So let's get this part out of the way first. I like the feel of Rio a lot more than my wife, Stacy. It's fun, it has a good energy, and the Ipanema Beach neighborhood we were in felt alive and exciting without feeling like a 24/7 party town. The people are generally nice, and they tried to help us out when we were struggling with Portuguese. And let's face it, it's pretty darn easy to struggle with Portuguese. But the energy that I found warm, inviting, and fun felt loud and chaotic to my wife. And while I felt like the atmosphere was something I could get used to and enjoy long term, Stacy felt about it a little like she feels about Las Vegas. It is a fantastic place to visit for 3 or 4 days, and then it's time to go home. And in the end, the question isn't whether Rio is exciting, it's whether it's sustainable. So with that in mind, let's talk about how Rio stacks up in our 4 key categories. We're looking for places where we can live comfortably for $6,000 to $6,500 per month. But that includes everything, including our monthly fixed expenses for things such as health insurance, life insurance, subscriptions, credit card fees, gifts, and unexpected expenses. Take all those away, and you're left with about $4,500 per month. In Rio, restaurants typically cost $25 to $35 or more, and our 5-day Airbnb cost us more than our 1-month stay in Cuenca, Ecuador is going to cost. We'll talk about financial sustainability in more detail in our final video about Rio de Janeiro. But for now, I think we're going to put this in the financial stress category. Assessing safety is a tricky subject, particularly for a big city like Rio de Janeiro. Every big city has areas that aren't safe, areas that you shouldn't be alone or at night, especially as a foreigner, and Rio is no exception. But if you stick to the good neighborhoods, Rio feels safe. The neighborhood we were in Ipanema Beach always felt safe to us, even when Google Maps routed us down a street that was a little darker than we wanted late one night, which caused me a little apprehension. But what we experienced in 5 days is only a small slice of what Rio has to offer, and to really dig into the safety issues, we need to look at some statistics. We'll do that in our future video about Rio de Janeiro, but for now, we wanted to note that the US State Department lists Brazil as a level 2 country, which is one of the better rankings for Latin American countries. Many of the countries we travel to are ranked worse than Brazil at threat level 3. Subject to our deeper dive, my preliminary sense is that Rio likely passes the safety test. Let's face it, most people don't factor in quality of healthcare when making a decision about where to go on vacation. But we're not on vacation, and I have a pre-existing heart condition, so the quality and availability of healthcare is a key part of our assessment. We didn't need to use the healthcare when we were in Rio, but Rio does have both a public and a private system. We would probably use the private system. It has modern facilities and lots of English-speaking staff members. It is more expensive than the largely free public system, but it's a comfort knowing it's available to us. Based on our preliminary assessment and subject to the deeper dive in our upcoming video, it looks like Rio may well pass the healthcare test. Okay, let's talk about the weather. This is probably the most subjective category on this initial list. What works for some people doesn't work for others, and we're probably outliers in this area. Many travelers use what's called chasing the sun, seeking out destinations around the globe that are always sunny and warm. We're pretty much the opposite. My wife Stacy doesn't like heat and she hates humidity. So we're looking for places that stay in the 40s to 70s Fahrenheit. In January, Rio de Janeiro fails miserably. But that's the peak of Brazil's summer, and temperatures in the 90s with high humidity are common. If we had to decide on Rio de Janeiro in January, it would be off the list immediately. But Brazil is in the southern hemisphere, which gives us an opportunity to escape the hot and humid summers of North America and move to South America in their winter time. We'll do a deeper dive into Rio's year-round weather in our upcoming video, but for now, let's put this one in the maybe category. If a place passes our initial pass-fail test, then the next question is it a location we can live comfortably long-term? To do that, we move on to some of the categories we can score numerically rather than on a strict pass-fail criteria. But before I move on, if you're getting any value out of this video, please hit the like button and consider subscribing to our channel. It doesn't cost you anything and it really helps us out a lot. We don't have a car and we don't want one. So if a city isn't walkable, it's unlikely we're going to want to spend 3 or more months there year after year. Although the availability of cheap, efficient public transportation can mitigate the effects of walkability a bit. So let's talk about how Rio fared. In the areas we walked around, pretty darn good. We walked almost everywhere. The streets have good sidewalks and they're well lit at night, particularly the big streets. And the touristy beach areas are almost entirely flat. On the few occasions we didn't want to walk, Uber was cheap and readily available. And here's something that really surprised us. Rio probably had the cleanest streets and sidewalks we've ever seen. There was almost no trash on the ground and we never saw dog feces on the sidewalk. What we did see were countless people cleaning up trash day and night. It was a great and unexpected surprise. Food is an important part of everyday life. And while most people can probably get by for a week or 2 on vacation without being able to find everything they want to eat, if you're going to live somewhere for 3 months, you want to be able to find the foods you like. We weren't in Rio long enough to do a lot of grocery shopping, but our sense was that we could probably find most of what we wanted to find in the stores. For restaurants, it seems like Rio has a pretty good variety and quality of food choices. When we do our deeper dive, we'll show you the list of food items we're going to be looking for in every city and test how Rio fares. But just as an example, if I can't get a good cheeseburger somewhere, I'm not staying 3 months. If there's a food you can't live without, leave it in the comments. We may agree and add it to our list. This is a tricky category for us, particularly since we were only in Rio for 5 days. But we need to be able to find affordable housing within our budget, which probably means something in the range of $1,500 to $2,000 per month. And we're not looking for a tiny studio apartment. We're looking for a comfortable 1-bedroom at least, with a nice bathroom, a dedicated work area, and a washing machine, if not a dryer. And for Rio in particular, given our safety concerns, we'd probably limit ourselves to Ipanema, Copacabana, and Leblon beach areas. We really liked our location in Ipanema Beach and it checked many boxes for us. But even assuming we could get a long-term discount, it's still way outside our budget. In terms of overall assessment, we're going to need to do a little deeper dive before we can make a conclusion about housing availability. Visa requirements are likely not a big deal in most of the locations we'll be visiting. Most countries will grant U.S. citizens a tourist visa with little bureaucracy for 30 to 90 days. And for countries that only grant an initial 30-day visa, it's often very easy to get another 30 to 60 days, again without much bureaucracy. But this is one of the reasons that our plan involves 3-month blocks, because most countries will require a more extensive visa for stays longer than 90 days. The process may be cumbersome, costly, and take a long time and be filled with a lot of stress. This may make perfect sense if you're planning to relocate somewhere permanently, but I can't imagine going through all of those hoops 3 times a year. So what about Brazil? Brazil does require a visa for U.S. citizens, but it's a fairly simple process. It can be done online in a few minutes and is good for 10 years. Once you have the visa, you can stay up to 90 days in any 12-month period, which would likely work perfectly for us. So where does that leave us? Rio checks a lot of boxes, but it also comes with a few pretty big concerns, particularly in terms of cost and weather. In our next video about Rio, we'll score it formally and answer the question of whether it might make the cut as a potential location for our rotating home bases lifestyle. If you've been to Rio recently, please let us know what you thought about it. We're still trying to collect information on all the locations we visit, and getting real on-the-ground stories from people who have been there is a lot more valuable to us than things we can find out on the internet. So stay tuned for our next video about Rio, where we finally answer the question about whether it might make the cut as one of our rotating home bases. Until next time, thanks for watching.